Jaya Vishnu Padma Rajikacharya Stotastata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnu Padma Sapad Rajikacharya Stotastata Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiv Asari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to some of the Buddhis, Hare Krishna. All glories to some of the Buddhis, Hare Krishna. All glories to some of the Buddhis, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from 5th canto, 9th chapter, verse 18. This is in prose. Risham Amarsha Roshavesha Prabhasa Vilasita Bru Kuti Vitapa Kutila Damstra Runik Shanatopati Bayanaka Vadana Hantu Kame Vedam Mahata Hasam Ati Samrambena Vimunchanti Tata Utpatya Papiyasam Dushtanam Tenai Vasina Vivrikna Shirshnam Galat Sravantam Asrig Asavam Atushnam Saha Ganena Nipiyati Panamada Vivalochashtaram Swaparshadai Saha Jagao Nanartha Cha Vijahara Cha Shiraha Kanduka Lilaya. Word for word translation. Brisham, very highly. Amrisha, in intolerance of the offenses. Rosha, in anger. Avesha, of her absorption. Rabhasa Vilasita, expanded by the force. Through Kuti, of her eyebrows. Vitapa, the branches. Kutila, curved. Damstra, teeth. Aruna Ikshana, of reddish eyes. Atopa, by the agitation. Ati, very much. Bhayanaka, fearful. Vadana, having a face. Hantu kama, desirous to destroy. Eva, as if. Idam, this universe. Maha attahasam, a greatly fearful laugh. Ati, great. Samrambena, because of anger. Vimunchanti, releasing. Tataha, from the altar. Utpatya, coming forth. Papiyasam, of all the sinful. Dushtanam, great offenders. Tena eva asina, by that same chopper. Vivrikna, separated. Shirshnam, whose heads. Galat, from the neck. Sravantam, oozing out. Asrik asavam, the blood, compared to an intoxicating beverage. Ati ushnam, very hot. Saha, with. Ganena, her associates. Nipiya, drinking. Atipana, from drinking so much. Mada, by intoxication. Vivala, overwhelmed. Uchahai taram, very loudly. Swa Parshadai, her associates. Saha with Jagao sang, Nanarta danced, Cha also, Vijahara played, Cha also, Shiraha Kanduka using the heads as balls, Leelaya by sports. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Intolerant of the offenses committed, the infuriated goddess Kali flashed her eyes and displayed her fierce curved teeth. Her reddish eyes glowed, and she displayed her fearsome features. She assumed a frightening body, as if she were prepared to destroy the entire creation. Leaping violently from the altar, she immediately decapitated all the rogues and thieves with the very sword with which they had intended to kill Jad Bharat. She then began to drink the hot blood that flowed from the necks of the beheaded rogues and thieves, as if this blood were liquor. Indeed, she drank this intoxicant with her associates, who were witches and female demons. Becoming intoxicated with his blood, they all began to sing very loudly and dance as though prepared to annihilate the entire universe. At the same time, they began to play with the heads of the rogues and thieves, tossing them about as if they were balls. Purport. It is evident from this verse that the devotees of Goddess Kali are not at all favored by her. It is Goddess Kali's work to kill and punish the demons. Goddess Kali, or Durga, engages in decapitating many demons, dacoits, and other unwanted elements in society. Neglecting Krishna consciousness, foolish people try to satisfy the goddess by offering her many abominable things. But ultimately, when there is a little discrepancy in this worship, the goddess punishes the worshiper by taking his life. Demoniac people worship Goddess Kali to obtain some material benefit, but they are not excused of the sins performed in the name of worship. To sacrifice a man or animal before the deity is specifically forbidden. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome, devotees. I thought I would have time to prepare something more detailed like I normally like to do. I didn't have that time, so I'll just speak from the heart. Hopefully by your blessings, something useful will be said. This verse is very graphic. For me, it's wonderfully graphic. I find this very interesting and entertaining. It's Bhagavatam is chock full of everything, and this scene specifically, quite graphically described, it sounds like something from a horror movie that we might watch, or maybe a music video to a heavy metal song. It's quite intense. And I was thinking how this is a display of tamagun, or darkness, within the material world. And but our worshipable deity Krishna is also dark. He is Sham, and Krishna also utilizes darkness in his Leela and with his devotees to bring them closer to him. In Krishna Leela, we find like Trinavarta, for example. Whirlwind demon comes into Vrindavan and completely blacks out the sun from the sky, and you can imagine all the Brajavasis in terrible fear for Krishna, that this great calamity is happening. There's darkness enveloping the whole town, and Krishna disappeared in this great tumultuous situation. Similarly, with Indra inundating Vrindavan, bringing massive deluge of rain and hail to destroy Braj. And even in the Rasa Leela, we have the gopis, they run out into the darkness. They're young girls and they run out into the forest. That's terrifying. It's a display of the wonders of how Krishna uses darkness in his internal potency, how it's part of his Leela and it's part of his enjoyment with his devotees. However, what we see here in the Bhagavatam is the material perverted aspect of this darkness, the dacoits, or the rogues, the thieves. They're going to sacrifice Jad Bharat, human sacrifice, and they're going to kill him for what they think is the pleasure of Goddess Kali. But we can understand that she is actually devotee of Krishna, and so she's not going to tolerate this. But this is a fierce display of the mode of darkness, and not the good kind that you might, or not the good darkness that you might find in Krishna Leela. This is the perverted aspect that is the shadow of Krishna. It pushes us further away from him. I used to think that modern day human sacrifice and things like that, there's talk about these things amongst about modern politicians and things, and I used to just push them aside as like I can't bother to hear this. But there's some truth to these things. I won't go into the details because I don't know the details. I choose not to listen to the details about these things, but I've come to realize and accept that this happens today. It happened yesterday. It'll probably continue to happen till tomorrow, until Mahaprabhu's Gauri Yuga is in full swing. But I think it was a couple weeks ago. I can't remember Prabhu's name. He's a disciple of Hridayananda Maharaj. He gave class and he was explaining that this pastime of Jad Bharat happens in Treta Yuga. And so you can see how even in Treta Yuga, such a relatively advanced age compared to Kali Yuga, even then there's human sacrifice amongst degraded human beings who are fully engrossed in the mode of darkness. And so you better believe that these things are happening now too. This is just part of existence in this material world. Having said that, the main topic that I was thinking about that I wanted to talk about was protection. Tarika Prabhu, I think it was maybe last week, was stressing this point with this pastime of Jad Bharat. He, of course, Jad Bharat is in quite a unique position. He's remembered his previous life as the deer, and in the life before that, he was a great emperor. So his life is pretty rare, it seems, and but he's going through this experience to teach us. And in this lifetime of Jad Bharat, he's completely, absolutely determined to not get involved with material energy. He's just biding his time to leave that body and go back to Krishna in whichever form he understands and worships Krishna. And so he doesn't do anything to protect himself. And of course, Krishna protects him. We even see here, Durga protects him from um, the murderers, the tamagun engrossed murderers who were going to sacrifice him, human sacrifice. And so we see that Krishna always gives protection to his devotees. However, we should also take measures to protect ourselves. Krishna will always protect us, but it's also attractive when someone you care for does something to take care of themselves as well, especially when they have the capacity to do so. That is an exchange of love, and that is very attractive to the caretaker. The caretaker will always uh, give protection and love, ideally. But if the person under their care does something to take care of themselves, that's attractive, that's pleasing to the caretaker. And so we should also do things to take care of ourselves and take care of each other. And this protection it's very multifaceted. It can take so many different forms. Just on a gross level, we can see that we should protect ourselves. And when I say us, I'm talking about all devotees in and outside of the temple. We should take measures to protect ourselves, of course, according to the nature and capacity of the person. I wouldn't expect a lady to pick up a rifle and put herself in harm's way, but there are men who have that nature, and so Taraka Prabhu was giving the example of the devotees in New Vrindavan were attacked violently by a biker gang in the early days. We also hear pastime of a biker gang, maybe the same gang or a different one, I'm not sure, in California would attack the devotees there. In Mayapur, in the early days, the local Muslims violently attacked the devotees there. Not that long ago, there was a devotee who was murdered. I think it was around Mayapur, somewhere in India. Just last year, we had a visit from gypsies that at Gita Nagari, and of course, gypsies have been going around the whole U.S. and robbing ISKCON temples and also non-ISKCON Hindu quote unquote temples. So you can see that this is this part of existing in the material world. This is happening all around us, and if we have the nature to do so, and we have the capacity to do so, we should take measures to protect ourselves, of course, within reason and with balance to all the other things that we have to do. But that's just that's more of a gross level of protecting from violence, protection from theft, things like that. We should definitely do these things and be aware of these things. Another level of protection is subtle, and that is so diverse. And it's subtle, so it's not easy to see or understand. But on a mental level and an emotional level, we should protect ourselves, protect each other, especially children, if we're raising children, to be aware of the complexities of Kali Yuga. To give protection in this way, in my opinion, is of utmost importance. In the first canto of the Bhagavatam, in a purport, Prabhupada explains that in a proper human society, the women, the children, and the elderly are given proper protection. And you can see, and he stresses the point that in Kali Yuga, you can see these are the persons who are most affected. And if you look, you can see that it's intense. Just for an example, I when I was younger, around age 16 or 17. At the time, it was quite an austerity and quite intense, but looking back on it, I see it as a benediction that I spent some time working in a retirement home, in the kitchen of a retirement home, and I would frequently visit the medical wing of the retirement home, persons with dementia and such. And I could see very vividly and very disturbingly what it is like, at least in America. I think probably in many other Western countries, this is also prominent, how elderly persons are just brushed aside, brushed away, and put into facilities like this where they are not taken care of at all. They are neglected. They're fed, they're housed, they're clothed, but on a subtle level, mental level, emotional level, they're absolutely neglected and they suffer extremely intensely. Just a brief example, I had elderly persons in this situation literally grab me by the arm and beg me to kill them. They would say, kill me, kill me. And as a 16-year-old, I'm just like eyes wide, like, what the hell is happening? Where am I? What is going on? And so I've had a first-hand example of just how poorly the elderly are treated in Kali Yuga, at least in the Western countries, and I'm sure this neglect probably manifests in other places as well, but I don't know the details of it. The children, they are not taken care of properly. I'll speak about that in a minute. Women, you see that many women nowadays, especially my generation and younger, they very enthusiastically and wholeheartedly are determined to take care of themselves. They don't need a man to take care of them. And you can't blame them, because the way Kali Yuga is so degradedly intense is that the men are especially weak nowadays, and to give proper protection to a woman, that is rarely seen. And so you can't blame them for taking up the initiative themselves. That, well, I'm not properly, they might not understand this on a, of course some of them do, others might not understand it on a deep philosophical intellectual level, that woman's nature is to be taken care of by the male nature, and they, in their heart, they probably experience that this isn't happening and I have to do something. It's really a survival mechanism. And so this great imbalance between male and female energy is so prominent that, yeah, persons are not taken care of, and they have to go to extreme measures to take care of themselves, which further imbalance the whole setting. And then, of course, children, taking care of children and raising children in a proper human way. I see that reflecting on my own experience. I grew up in an average middle class American family, and of course I had calamities happen in my life, but relatively speaking, if you look at my childhood compared to other children of my age, it was an average experience. But now that I'm practicing bhakti, and especially I have a great interest in psychology and mental health care, and I'm trying to start a career in mental health care, reflecting back and undergoing my own intensive journey of healing, I can see that even though on a surface level, this relatively normal experience of growing up in America circa 1990, 2000s, it was actually very, very challenging and detrimental to my mental health. And it just compounded over the years. And now, as I peel back the layers and I study these things, I can see how human beings in Kali Yuga, I mean, of course, children of devotees are, I hope, an exception. And from what I can see, are an exception. But generally speaking, children are not properly taken care of. And what happens is as they grow up, these compounded psychological wounds, they just become compounded and they become more complex. And when these persons come to Krishna consciousness and they start practicing, these are very, very deep impediments to their advancement in Krishna consciousness. The whole goal and the whole premise is to focus on chanting Hare Krishna and all the manifold things that are incorporated into that process. But in order to focus one's mental energy into that process, there are so many distractions that are inherent within the psyche of the human, within the person, and the surroundings are just so intense. Weapons of mass distraction constantly bombarding us. And I found that in my study, I found the root. I don't understand all the details of it, but I can explain some details that I found so far. The root of this, and especially developing a young human being into a nice, productive, happy, healthy person, the root that where this process is impeded is impersonalism. This material cosmos, the default setting of the material cosmos is impersonalism. And so it's very easy to act that way, to think that way. And it can take so many different forms. And the forces of Kali are propagating it, are cultivating it, and making it much, much worse and much more intense. And so as devotees, it's our duty to understand these things and to counteract them so we can focus on chanting Hare Krishna, so we can focus on our seva, so we can focus on each other and taking care of each other. I'll give an example of this deep impersonalism and how it disturbs the proper human development. When a child is born up to the age of 5, mind you, I've heard this from a devotee in Toronto who has I don't know if they still have it or not, but a Vedic school. And I think this conception is based off of Chanakya Pandit, but don't quote me because I'm not 100% sure. But this person was explaining to me from 0 to 5 years old, ideally the child should be given what's the word? Unconditional love, and somehow or other the child should experience unconditional love from 0 to 5, and then from 5 upwards there's discipline and et cetera, et cetera. But in order to give this unconditional love, we have to act personally with the child. The child has to understand that I'm a person within this body and my caretakers are also person, and they're acknowledging that. They're acknowledging that I'm having an emotional experience, a sensual experience, and they're acknowledging my personhood. If this doesn't happen, the default is to think that I'm not worthy. I'm not a person. I must be nothing. I must not be lovable. And these thoughts become a belief system, and they got added into the false ego. Mother Sukavaha, in a class, she gave a nice illustration that The false ego is a conglomerate of belief systems. And in our childhood, depending on our experiences, we can generate belief systems that we are not lovable, or we're not persons, or we're not good enough. And these beliefs can be formed in early childhood, and what happens is life goes on. But these beliefs stay hidden. They are formed and they are hidden, and they often go into the subconscious mind. And then as we grow up, and they come out. They come out in often subconscious ways. And then as we chant Hare Krishna and we get purified, these layers get peeled back and these things come to the surface. Mother Sukaba gave a nice illustration of the false ego works like, imagine on your phone you have an app or multiple apps, and you're not actually using these apps, but they're open, and what they're doing is they're using up your battery life, they're using up your data, they're running in the background, although you're not using them and you might not be aware of them. And so similarly in our false ego, these belief systems are there, but we might not be consciously aware of them, but they're sucking up our energy and they're using up our internal capacity, basically. And so in our early childhood, I'll give you an example that I saw. Sometimes I get sucked into the black hole of watching short clip videos on YouTube. Sometimes I need a cheap laugh to keep my sanity and keep my balance. And unfortunately, well, I guess it's a benediction because I'm making deeper connections with it, but I saw this video of there's a small child, no more than 2 years old, and he has a little toy plastic basketball, and he's walking up to a plastic tiny basketball net, and he's gonna put the ball through the hoop. And then the father, I'm assuming it's the father, whoever it is, it's a grown male, probably in his 30s, as a joke, is filming the child walk up to the net to throw the basketball through the hoop. Not really throw, he's walking up to it. And then the father, as a joke, very quickly and very surprisingly smacks the ball out of the child's hand. And the child immediately starts screaming. And for the adult, this is funny because on a basketball court amongst adults, if you manage to accomplish something like that, you express dominance in the game, right? But in this scenario, it's a completely helpless tiny child, and the parental figure is smacking the ball out of his hand, right? And this is for a cheap laugh. But what is understood, or not understood most likely by this caretaker and by many other people, is that this one small example that we're seeing on a public forum, there's probably many, many more instances that happen to this child that we're not seeing. What is happening for that child is a very, very detrimental, very scary, very destructive experience. This child is somehow or other learned along the way that putting this ball through this circular opening, this action brings satisfaction and brings some happiness, and he probably gets some praise from other caretakers. There's probably some laughter, some smiling, and so somehow or other, you can just try to imagine yourself. Your body is 2 years old. You have intelligence. You are a person, and you're in this body, but your capacities for understanding are extremely limited, and your motor skills are extremely limited. But as far as you know in your short existence, is that putting this round object into this hole brings love, brings happiness, brings support. And so you go to do that. And then the parental figure, most likely one of the persons that taught you how to do this, immediately smacks it out of, and surprisingly and violently smacks it out of your hand. And so the child, you imagine in this body, you feel intense pain and fear and just terrified. I mean, in the video, the child just screamed. And you can easily imagine that you're in this body and you are a person, you're having a person experience because you are a spirit soul. There's no avoiding that. And in your limited capacity, you're trying to accomplish this feat, to bring love, to bring joy, to bring support, and it's cut short in a violent way by the caretaker. And so I can't say what happened to that child, but you can use your intelligence as an adult to understand that what can happen is that this child can use his very, very limited but inherently present intelligence to understand that, well, I must not be worthy of this accomplishment. I must be a bad person. Otherwise, I mean, what other explanation is there, right? My caretaker violently took the ball out of my hand. What other explanation is there other than I'm not a person, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not good enough? And so if this happens, what happens? The child grows up, he might be fed properly, he might be clothed properly, he might go to school, and outwardly everything might seem average, but internally, what can be happening is that there's a belief system hidden within the subconscious mind and hidden within the false ego that I'm not a good person, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough. And that will pervade the entire subtle existence of that person. And if that person hopefully gets the opportunity to chant Hare Krishna, what's going to happen is that he's going to get purified, and this belief system is going to come to the surface, and he's going to have to deal with it. He's going to have to confront it. And by Krishna's grace, by the mercy of the devotees, he'll get through it. But it will be an immense challenge for him. And so, yeah, this is just an example that I observed and that I've been thinking about. I've been reading a book called The Primal Wound. It's a psychological perspective on they don't use this word. They don't use the word impersonalism. It's they use technical modern psychological terms, but in Vaishnava terminology, basically what they're saying is impersonalism is extremely poisonous to the human psyche. And you can see how at young age this poison can enter, and it affects us throughout our life. And especially when we come to Krishna consciousness, we can expect persons who are younger, who are coming to Krishna consciousness, and we want them to come to us, we want them to chant with us, we can expect them to have these this baggage in their subtle body. And for us, raising children, taking care of others, we should understand that these subtle things are there, and they're extremely powerful. And so it's helpful for, not every devotee needs to understand psychology, but it's helpful that there are some who are interested in it and they can learn about it and share these insights with others for the purpose of protection and nourishing each other. But yeah, that's mostly all that came to mind. I didn't have anything else prepared. Sorry, I didn't reference Shastra. I didn't have time to pull things up, but if anybody has any comments, questions, or corrections, please share.
I have something, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Of course, this is not, I can't back it up by Shastra, but neither did you. So I feel confident that I can make a point here. I'm not sure that in every instance, a child's situation creates a trauma in future events, just like the example that you gave, the child with the basketball. It may just be surprising, and because of the sudden move of the father, it may appear to be violent too, but maybe the aftermath is that everybody, mother, father, and whomever is present, they're laughing, and the child realizes it's just loving exchange, and there's hugs and smiles. It's possible. Is a totally possible. That is not like something that is to be stored as a violent, traumatic experience. Also, again, I don't have a degree in psychology or any shastric evidence of that. Also, as far as impersonalism being the threat, I think materialism is just as bad, in the sense of people think I am the body and there is no afterlife. I can do whatever the hell I want, and I can go out and kill people, and by others killing me because of a consequence of my actions, there's nothing there. So that is just as harmful, if not more harmful than impersonalism. So I believe there's I don't know, a different perspective, perhaps. Can you comment on my comments?
Yeah, I agree that in every scenario, it's not going to cause trauma. But just the way Kali Yuga is progressing, I can imagine that it's very prominent. However, it's not black and white. It's not like every scenario this is going to happen, but I think it's very common, and it's going to become increasingly common. And yeah, materialism, of course, is extremely poisonous in of itself. Whether it's equal to or greater than impersonalism, I have no idea. But I think the fact that even within Prabhupada's pranam mantra, it specifically mentions impersonalism, that Prabhupada came to crush this poison of impersonalism. That, to me, is a strong sign that this impersonalism should be addressed and counteracted. Whether it's equal to or worse than or less than materialism, I have no idea, but I think if some devotees take more, priority on combating materialism, and then other devotees take more priority in combating impersonalism, I think that's great. There's for Krishna, there's enjoyment in the variety, right? So I think both, whether one takes preference in combating one or the other, I think would be a expression of personalism. So yeah, that's all I can comment on that, I guess.
Well, in Prabhupada's pranam, there is also Sunyavadi. There is Nirvishesha and Sunyavadi, a voidism, which is like there is nothing. There's just void. We are matter, and nothing matters, really.
Yeah,
No pun intended.
You can also say it's impersonalism, because you are nothing, I am nothing, which is the opposite of personalism.
Also, one thing about the child given unconditional love until the age of 5, and discipline just starts at 5. I find it to be a double-edged sword, as if there are no boundaries, as it seems to suggest, that unrequited uh, unalloyed love seems like has no boundaries. The child can do any damn thing and get away with it, and he's fine. But I think I've seen very clear examples of parents being enablers, and in the name of love, they will give the child an opportunity to become a tyrant. So I'm not sure that has to be applied with knowledge, not just with you just give love and close your eyes to the reality that is that the child has no boundaries. And now once they get to the age of 5, they're used to be a little tyrant, and they will be spoiled by their own parents. So that has to be applied with a certain degree of responsibility, knowledge, and put boundaries in place.
Of course, when I said the child should be given unconditional love so that they understand that's a sutra. That's like a principle to be followed, right? How somebody follows it and actually puts that into practice is going to vary. And of course, there should be intelligence on how to do that, right? So thank you for sharing your opinion. Anybody else have anything?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Whoa.
I've got plenty, but there's no time. But I thank you for a very nice class. I always look forward to your classes. I expected a well-prepared discussion, and although you did not prepare, I still was not disappointed. It was very nice. Hey, with regards to this this idea of unconditional love for the young child, and then discipline beginning at the age of 5. Srila Prabhupada discusses this in a number of places. There's actually there are 3 divisions that he discusses. There is the earliest childhood, during which the child is just showered with loving affection. Starting at the age of 5, there is more intensive discipline, but discipline and preliminary training is also given from the beginning. Srila Prabhupada describes in his own life, he was raised in such a way that he would not even go to the bathroom without taking his mother's permission. But the 3rd division is begins at the age of 15. At that point, Srila Prabhupada said, you can no longer discipline the child. If you try to punish a child from that point forward, you damage the relationship. It becomes broken. So he explains that from the age of 15 onward, the child is to be treated as a friend, as an equal. And if they're not treated in that way, they become resentful, and the ability of the parent to convey important instruction to the child is adversely affected. The child will not be as receptive. So that's the general principle, but instruction is there at every stage, and discipline is always required from the very beginning. A child the child has a tendency to run into the street. It has to be explained to him that, this is dangerous. You have to look both ways. You can be seriously injured or killed. And if the child fails to follow good instruction, then some disciplinary action must be taken for the protection of the child. So it's not that there are no boundaries and the child can do anything at all unrestrictedly. There must certainly be boundaries established early on. Child's life is actually heavily structured by the parents. In the absence of that, the child will become extremely insecure and also will be subject to all kinds of serious threats. So discipline is always a factor, but heavy on the loving affection in the beginning, and then after the age of 5 begins more serious disciplining and instruction, and gradually as the child matures, that process increases up until a certain stage of maturation, at which point the disciplining has to be relaxed, because the child will just no longer accept that without reacting adversely. So just to clarify, and we're up to 8 o'clock. I think that, while the retreat is going on, we're not going to have the door shut on the deities, or maybe I'm wrong, or maybe it's over now. I don't know, but
The retreat is over.
okay. So maybe I should stop or continue further. Hey, I put a quote in the chat, and it would be great if you could read that to everyone, along with the purport, if there's time. Very important and pertinent to today's discussion. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for commenting. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll read the translation and purport, and just to add on to what you were saying. Thank you for clarifying about the point that there's always discipline, but from 0 to 5, there's great emphasis on the child being loved, especially the child not just being loved, because giving love can take so many different forms. But the most important part is that the child experiences that. Otherwise, I mean, what is corroborated by modern psychology is that if that's not there, like you said, there's very deep insecurity that manifests throughout the rest of their child's life. And so even in adolescence and young adult, what can happen is that those very, very deep insecurities are there, and there's great fear on how to navigate the world. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16, Verse 10, translation. The Brahmanas, the cows, and the defenseless creatures are my own body. Those whose faculty of judgment has been impaired by their own sin look upon these as distinct from me. They are just like furious serpents, and they are angrily torn apart by the bills of the vulture-like messengers of Yamaraj, the superintendent of sinful persons. Purport. The defenseless creatures, according to Manu Samhita, are the cows, brahmanas, women, children, and old men. Of these 5, the brahmanas and cows are especially mentioned in this verse because the Lord is always anxious about the Lord is always anxious about the benefit of the brahmanas and the cows, and is prayed to in this way. The Lord especially instructs, therefore, that no one should be envious of these 5, especially the cows and brahmanas. In some of the Bhagavatam readings, the word duhitri is used instead of duhatihi. But in either case, the meaning is the same. Duhatihi means cow, and duhitrihi can also be used to mean cow, because the cow is supposed to be the daughter of the sun god. Just as children are taken care of by the parents, women as a class should be taken care of by the father, husband, or grown-up son. Those who are helpless must be taken care of by their respective guardians. Otherwise, the guardians will be subjected to the punishment of Yamaraj, who is appointed by the Lord to supervise the activities of sinful living creatures. The assistants or messengers of Yamaraj are likened here to vultures, and those who do not execute their respective duties in protecting their wards are compared to serpents. Vultures deal very seriously with serpents, and similarly, the messengers will deal very seriously with neglectful guardians. Very well. So it's our duty to take care of each other in many different ways, gross and subtle. And by Krishna's grace, we can learn how to do that. Hare Krishna. Thank you, devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.